Warning, this video contains spoilers for the first episode of Talentless Nana. Talentless Nana is a show about a girl who is tasked with killing her fellow classmates, who are powers, or talents as they're called in universe. These talents have caused numerous destructive events around the world. To prevent this, the governments of the world have created the fictitious enemies of humanity as a scapegoat to explain the disasters caused by the talented, and as a way of rounding up the talented and covertly eliminating them, under the guise of having them undertake isolated training to defeat this enemy. Nana is an orphaned talentless girl who pretends that she can read minds, but instead uses advanced social engineering techniques to fool her fellow classmates before she kills them. The show is quite good, but the thing that's often levelled against the show is that the classmates are abnormally stupid for high school students, like Oblivion NPC levels of stupid, as they do not immediately question Nana's mind-reading powers and accuse her of killing their classmates. However, I do not think this is completely true, and a fair accusation to make, as there are several reasons for why they do not question the enemies of humanity or Nana's mind-reading powers. Firstly, the enemies of humanity had been endlessly shown on TV and in newspapers, and there were physical evidence of their existence, with the remains of the ruined cities that were destroyed by them, so it's unlikely that the students would question their existence. The general public also believed in them as well, as shown later on where we learn that the relatives of a missing student were told that their child had died fighting the enemies of humanity. With their existence seemingly a fact, people are more likely to believe the other things about them, such as their bizarre list of powers, and that they are to be blamed for their demise of their fellow students. As the students themselves are being trained to face the enemies of humanity, it would make sense that they would be attacked at their camp, with the enemies of humanity trying to kill them. This is plausible enough that the students would make that assumption, rather than the more disturbing one, that a fellow student was killing them, especially if someone like Nana, a mind reader, claimed that she heard the enemies of humanity. So for many of them, the fact that it was an enemy of humanity attacking them was immediately jumped on as an explanation for the demise of their friends. Most people are not going to immediately jump on the belief that one of their fellow students is a serial killer, when there is an alternative solution that is also plausible. This is something that people who criticise the anime often forget about, that people don't always assume the worst of one another. Secondly, all the people sent to the island, bar the teachers and custodians, were talented, so it is perfectly reasonable that students would naturally assume Nana is saying the truth, that she can read minds, as why would the government have brought her to the island if she did not have any talents? On top of this, the power of the talented ranged dramatically from making poisons from eating poisonous creatures to being able to freeze everything in sight. It'd be perfectly reasonable for a mind control power to not always be active, or for some minds to be more difficult to read. She never really shows off her powers as well, unlike other members of her class, and since it is not incredibly flashy power like time travel, people would not really pressure her into seeing it in action. She could also quite easily, when asked, lie about it and place limitations on her power, as mentioned earlier, to prevent people from constantly asking her to read their minds, if she was bombarded with mind-reading requests. Lastly, let's talk about the students themselves. The class is very fractured, with each person fitting into their social group with very little overlap. The students themselves are just your typical high school students, with some powers, not super geniuses or experienced fighters like in My Hero Academia. The class includes people such as vain gyros, who probably wouldn't notice or care that people have gone missing, as long as it didn't affect them, and delinquents, who dodge as much school as possible anyway. Other members of the class have generic high school traits, such as Michiru, who is incredibly ditzy and believes in the best of people, so is easy to persuade into accepting Nana's version of events. Another example, Hatadira, is a selfish, nihilistic pervert due to his power, so if he was going to die, he would want to try and get something out of it for himself beforehand, as he had no interest in helping the rest of the class. Combine that with the teachers not caring if a student goes missing, and it is perfectly reasonable that most students would not really notice or care that a student they don't associate with has disappeared. Regarding Kyoyo, he does believe that Nana did kill Nakajima and Shibazwa, however he still believes that she has mind-reading powers, so questions why she would try to kill him next. It seems illogical to him that a mind reader would attempt to kill someone who they know is immortal. He also does not want to go out of his way to accuse her without sufficient evidence, as she is the leader of the group. Along with that, if he failed to convince the classmates that she was the killer, it would be easy for her to turn around on him, since he is a loner with the apparent lack of social skills. The other problem he faced is that when the first two classmates go missing, they don't leave any bodies behind, only a watch, so it's very hard to immediately claim that she was behind their disappearances, with only circumstantial evidence. In conclusion, they are high school students, not police detectives. In a world where creatures known as the enemies of humanity exist, it is completely plausible that they are the ones behind the disappearances of your classmates, rather than your fellow students. Most people would also take someone's word about them having a talent, especially if they are in a place only occupied by other talented people, so it is wrong for detractors to call the students in this anime incredibly stupid, as the class has about the same intelligence as every other class in anime high school. There are clever people, but there are also morons. However, to say someone is stupid for not immediately accusing another student of murder with only some minor circumstantial evidence is idiotic.